from Nashville, Tennessee. It's time for another episode of Tips, Tactics, and Tools for a Safer Tomorrow, where all things related to your safety and security are discussed, detailed, and delivered to you. You may leave with a tip that saves you money or a tactic that saves your life. So here are your hosts, owner and founder of Defense Systems, Brink Fiddler, and owner and operator of Herring Technology, Tom Herring.
Hey guys, welcome to this edition of Tips, Tactics, and Tools for a Safer Tomorrow. As always, I'm Brink Fiddler with Defense Systems, and as always is my co-host here with me, Tom Herring, owner and operator of Herring Technology. This podcast is about anything safety and security related, whether that's an event, whether that's a law enforcement event, law enforcement response, security technology, just basic ways to keep yourself safe and safer in what we call a dangerously developing world. Today's episode is a continuation of our March 27th series that we're doing in and around the events on March 27th, 2023 here in Nashville. And so we are honored and really happy today to have with us Rachel Sanderson, who is a substitute teacher, but that was one of the fourth grade teachers inside the school on the day of the event. And she had heard about this series and reached out. I think we have each other's contact information. Although I did not know her prior to this event, we've gotten to be friends post-event just because of things that transpired that day. So first of all, we really appreciate you being here and your willingness to do this and tell your story. I think it'll be really helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. We're honored to have you. So I want to get a little bit into your background and who you are, and then just start unpacking the day, with you. And as I told you off camera, if we need to take a break, whatever, it's heavy. This is a heavy topic. It gets me just about every time. I talk about it all the time, and it's still hard, just because it's a traumatic event. So just all those same things still apply. Just because the record button's running out doesn't mean anything's different. So a little bit about your background. Like obviously you have a teaching background. So at what point in life did you decide, hey, I'm going to be a teacher?
Well, actually, I went into college thinking I was going to be a lawyer.
Oh, okay.
Just a little strange. I went on a mission trip this summer before I actually officially started my freshman year, and realized all my life I'd been helping others, teaching others. I had younger siblings, and that's really where my heart was. I wanted to work with kids. So I went that direction. I changed to education, and I also started looking at a certification working with students with disabilities, and received my gifted ed certification there. And that's just how I started. So
okay.
No lawyer for me.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting too, because you don't normally lawyer and teacher, right? Usually not the same, not always, but usually not the same personality type. I mean, Of course, there's different types of attorneys too. I mean, a lot of attorneys get bad raps.
I was a teacher.
Yeah, I know.
I felt like I had to be a lawyer dealing with 7th and 8th grade.
I bet you did.
They had more defense systems than anybody.
Yeah, you don't know this, and we didn't tell you. So Tom comes from a teaching background. He was a biology teacher and soccer coach at a local private school long before founding this company. And so, yeah, he gets it. He gets that world. Yeah. But you obviously got your degree, and you said your certification or your designation is dealing with, like, what makes your teaching degree different?
Yes. So specifically, I got a certification working with students with learning and behavioral disorders.
Okay.
But starting off my first year teaching, it was just a gen ed classroom. However, it really doesn't matter if it's a gen ed classroom, because you're going to have students of all different backgrounds, education, experiences, learning abilities. So, I mean, it still benefited me greatly. So I worked in the classroom for a few years as a gen ed teacher, and then a transition to a gifted teacher in a county south of here. And I really enjoyed that. I was able to work with teachers more. I was still working with students in small groups, but I enjoyed working alongside teachers, exploring curriculum, differentiating things for students. And kind of along that experience, I started to realize I wanted to actually work with older students. I felt like I could build relationships, especially with, and I know I'm still young, but there were young teachers coming in, and I enjoyed building relationships with them, especially first-year teachers. So I actually started a doctorate degree and was in the midst of that when March 27th happened. I was about a third of the way. I did end up finishing, and
Awesome.
we can get more into that later. But so during that spring, I decided I wanted to start subbing. I wanted to be back in the classroom. I was working on that doctorate degree, and we also had our second child. She was only a little bit over a year old at the time, and that's what I was doing.
That's cool. And I have a special place in my heart for teachers that go that route. I don't know if I ever told you this or not, but I have 2 kids, and my youngest, who's my son, is on autism
Yes.
spectrum and nonverbal, so like the heart of a teacher is a real thing anyway. Tom's obviously come with the exception to that rule, but kidding.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. But it takes a special heart to be a teacher, and it even takes a more special person to take on the challenges of that, because it's a whole, it's a whole different ball game, whole different ball of wax. But it's but that's awesome. So you had not. I just want to kind of clarify. You'd been teaching, and then you took off from teaching to go through the doctorate program.
Yes.
Okay.
Around the time our second child was about to be born.
Okay.
It seemed like a great time
I bet.
to exit the classroom for a while.
Yeah.
And my goal really was to finish a doctorate degree and use that and get into a university or community college, which I was able to do after the shooting, the fall semester after that, and worked at a local community college working with incoming freshman students who struggled in reading. And I loved it.
That's cool.
And I hope to continue doing that. We just had our third child, so taking another step back.
Yeah, but yeah, that's for a very good reason. So that's okay.
Right.
And to your point, you are still very young. So, so the spring then of 23 is when you decided to get back into subbing, just to get back in the classroom some.
Right.
Okay.
And wanted to get to know Covenant school side more. I was more familiar with the church side. We are also exploring locations for our oldest daughter, who'd be starting kindergarten in a few years. So I wanted to get to know everybody better, and had reached out to Sub and had a formal Zoom interview with Dr. Kuntz, with Catherine. And that was my first day subbing there, was March 27th.
Wow.
First day.
First day.
How familiar were you with the whole building though? Or would you say you were, obviously from the church side of things, you knew some of the building, but.
Pretty familiar. However, walking in with my, education hat on, with the teacher mindset of, here's my schedule for the day, here's my roster, that was it seemed like a different environment just because I was wearing a different hat, if that makes sense.
Definitely. So, I kind of just want to unpack the day. Just step by step. So, obviously, you were excited about subbing and learning more. And so, what did the morning look like for you? Like,
the morning was actually really chaotic on the home front. And when I got in the car, I thought, I know this should be a good day. But right now, I am so stressed. Our second child, she had a lot of, different medical things going on for a while. And with her ear infections, we didn't get much sleep the night before. And when I drove up to the school, I'm never there that early in the morning. And I remember just feeling this sense of calmness when I drove up the hill. It's beautiful, as you guys know. The sun had just come up. Some of the trees were starting to bloom. And I just thought, okay, all that crazy stuff, then trying to get out the door and grabbing all my things, and it just went away. And I was excited to start the day. And really, like, I remember looking out over the hill, you know, you're up kind of high, and just thinking this is such a beautiful place, and like truly God's creation is amazing.
Yep. Yeah, the place is awesome. So I guess you knew some of the process, but if it's your first day subbing, I mean, not that you're a stranger to teaching by any means, but it's your first day subbing at a school you had not subbed at before, and a lot of people you didn't know. And interestingly, though, we talked about this offline a little bit beforehand. Prior to this, did you know the teacher you were subbing for?
I did not.
Okay.
And, you know, out of all the things that have happened since then, that's been one of the greatest joys, has been getting to know the teacher that I was subbing for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, there's so much tragedy that came out of this thing, but there's so many other stories that are awesome and beautiful that have come out of this too. And that's a lot of what this whole podcast series is about, is just storytelling and helping people heal and learn and talk, and, you know, just get it out there, because, you know, there's a lot of talk in the March 27th community about, you know, nobody talks about it, you know, but everybody wants, not everybody, but a lot of people want to talk about it. And so that's kind of where all this came from. So were you there before anybody, or were there people there?
I was there pretty early, but there were others there.
Okay.
One of the staff members showed me around, gave me my badge, you know, just ordinary sub type things.
Yeah.
We walked into the classroom. I sat my things down. One interesting thing is I remembered from a parent tour, you know, missions tour, that they had Barracuda bars there. And I just remember noting that in my mind from before. And I asked the staff member, oh, you know, before you leave, show me where the Barracuda bar is, that morning. And she showed it to me, and I was like, can you show me how to work this thing again? Because it's a little complicated. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad she showed me, and I'm glad
you asked.
I was there.
Because I doubt it was, I see, we already asked so much of teachers, and especially subs. You know, I doubt that it's standard operating procedure for them to get the Barracuda bar out and show every sub. I mean, should it be? Obviously, if you're using it, yeah, of course it should be. But in reality, does that happen every day? No, I probably not. I don't know that for a fact, but.
Right. And I hadn't even seen those before, you know, as a classroom teacher. So I think that's why I remembered it too, because it was really interesting to me. And I was like, wow, they have, you know, this extra level here.
Yeah.
That we didn't have in the school system that I had been working in previously.
Yeah. So. Didn't have them. So it was obviously a new thing to you, but did you feel relatively good about it after that, like your ability to use it? And
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. It's kind of, looking back on it, I feel like it's a little weird that I remembered and asked about it. I mean, but
in this whole series, we've hit on a lot of things that like, we don't believe in coincidence, right? I mean,
yeah,
all three of us sitting here are
God's
strong believers. Yeah. And so there's a lot of God things that happen.
Right.
Like, a lot, like, I'm sorry, we're believers and we don't hide it, but, I don't believe in accidents, you know? So you get that done, and, which, I mean, kudos to you, girl. That's, that you had the wherewithal to even ask, but, how'd the day start for you with kiddos?
Yeah. We started off their normal routines, you know, every day they have chapel, which I thought was so special. I loved starting the day off with chapel, and worship and praying. That's not something that I did as a public school teacher. And just like the main thing I kept thinking is this is such a special place with special people.
Yeah.
The whole morning, and just felt grateful that I was there subbing, even though the morning started off a little chaotic.
Yeah.
So we had our chapel.
What does that go? If it's the first, 45 minutes, an hour?
Yeah, it's pretty brief.
Okay.
We had some practice for upcoming musical event, and that took place in the gym.
Okay.
And we were in there for quite a while, maybe an hour and a half. And after that completed, we headed back up to our classroom, and, I'm asking the students, okay, help me, what's the best way to get upstairs from where we are here?
Sure.
Because there's lots of ways to get to where you needed to go. And again, I wasn't familiar with their routines.
Yeah.
So, as a teacher, you always find one student who looks super helpful and who is acting helpful. And you ask, which way do you normally go back upstairs? And we got back to our room, and we're probably in our room for 15 minutes. And that's kind of when everything happened.
Do you remember who the student was? I don't want to say because who they are, but do you remember?
I don't remember specifically at that point.
Well, so much happened right after that. There's a lot that your brain's going to block out. It's just part of it. But do you remember which stairwell y'all went up?
I don't remember which way we went back up the stairs.
But when you say you guys were in the gym practicing for the musical thing, that would be there are 2 fourth grade classes at this time in the school, right? So was that both fourth grade classes were in there?
We were both in there.
In the gym together?
And there was also another grade level.
Okay. So several kids and teachers that were working on this musical thing. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then when you guys went back in the classroom, what was next? What were y'all 15 minutes into?
I remember this so specifically. We had just taken a language quiz, and I was walking around and giving them feedback, and I told them, if you finish early, flip over your paper and write down one interesting thing about yourself that you'd like to tell me. It's like looking for ways to get to know them.
Yeah.
Because I was their first time sub. And I know a couple of the students remember that because they shared that with their parents later.
That's cool.
Just sweet. They remembered that. We didn't have a lot of time together before everything happened, but I was trying to build a connection with them. And then we were going into a poetry lesson, and I had brought a book from home. I think it was The Cat in the Hat. We were talking about rhyme, and I was like, this is perfect. And they're fourth graders, and it's a little young, a younger book for fourth grade, but they'll enjoy it. All kids love being read too. So we started off with that, and that's when I think several students said to me, the fire alarm's going off. And honestly, my first thought is, oh, I'm a sub and the fire alarm is going off.
Yeah.
We're going to have to get outside, and it's going to be complicated, just when you're a sub and you don't know your environment. And yes, I know how to do fire drills. I've done them as a classroom teacher and as a student teacher for a decade, but just not having practiced that before, I'm thinking, oh, great. So I told them all, I said, stay seated, because this is the interesting thing. I did not hear a fire alarm go off.
Okay.
I did not hear anything. I don't know why. I've been in schools, several different schools with fire alarms that are so loud, they hurt your ears. I didn't hear it. And, I said, you all stay seated. I'm going to go figure out what's going on. And I went to the doorway, still not hearing a fire alarm. And at that point, that's when I started hearing the banging noises. And
Was your door open at this point?
I opened the door.
Okay.
And I start hearing the banging noises. It's pretty loud. And I don't know the technical term for it, but my brain was trying to categorize the sound, because I've heard after this event, when something like that is happening, your brain is desperately trying to put the sound into a category that you recognize.
It's called normalcy bias. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And that I experienced that. And my first thought that my brain is trying to normalize this noise is, wow, some student somewhere is having a behavior incident and they're banging on lockers.
Okay.
Because I've been in schools where we've had behavior incidences where you hear banging noises, and it stopped, and then I heard it again. And this time it was louder and it was closer. And I looked next door at my teaching partner, and
Were they in the hallway?
they were in their doorway near me.
So the doors are pretty close to each other.
Yeah, we were near one another. And looking at her and hearing the noise again helped me realize something's wrong. Something is wrong.
Are you still not hearing the fire alarm at this point?
I do not remember hearing the alarm at all. And I don't know if, the alarm was going off, but at that point my brain's only focusing on the banging noises. And just those two things, I just immediately told all the kids, get on the wall. Get on, the innermost wall. And I've practiced active shooter drills with my classrooms in previous schools. So I had experience in that. And I always took them very, very seriously. In one school district we had, I know I'm getting a little bit off here, but we had the local SWAT team come in, and we did a simulation with them. They had the blanks and all of that, that are supposed to reproduce the noise. And it was very traumatic. I think it was my first or second year of teaching, and it was like an in-service day. And I just remember after all the teachers were sitting in a big room, many were crying. And this was a simulation. I mean, this was not even the real thing, but it was very traumatic. And they talked to us after, and they were like, this was really hard. It's really important. And I just remember these words. One of the guys said, it's not a matter of if this is going to happen to you, it's a matter of when. Which was a little intense at the time, since everyone's
probably not the right thing to say.
Yeah, that's a little bold.
But I will say that stayed with me every year as a teacher. I clearly remember him standing there saying that, and probably was like, well, I don't think that's necessarily true, but I don't know. I mean, he said that to us, so I mean, it's serious. And he listed off, indicators for statistically, what puts you at risk based on your geographical location and things like that. And I just going through that, it really affected me. I think I probably took active shooter drills more seriously, maybe. Definitely because of that. So, I'd had experience locking down a classroom, pulling the curtain, blackout curtain, locking the door, and getting the kids on the hard corner. And that's what I did. I said, get on the hard corner. And I locked the door, which that's a whole thing, because I've worked in several different schools where the locking mechanisms are completely different.
Yep.
And it's confusing. There was one school district where in order to lock your door, and it's changing now, this was about almost 10 years ago, but you had to lock it from the outside in the morning with a key. And so if you forget and you're not sure, you have to go out in the hallway and relock it and have someone inside the room test it for you and make sure you can't get in to double check yourself. which is not what you want to be doing in the middle of an emergency. You know, we didn't have something like that. You know, I was able to lock the door, though.
From inside the room.
From inside the
Without
room.
getting into too much about their locks. But
Right.
easily lockable from inside the room.
Yes.
Yes.
And got the kids on the wall. And that's when we just heard everything, like unleash. I mean, it was
Even louder at this point.
It was even louder. And I've tried explaining it, you know, to friends and family. It's not like a gunshot one off in the woods, like a hunter, like you're hunting. It was like nothing I'd ever heard before. And, you know, some of us were thinking, is this construction? What's happening? And I just remember kind of putting my body over like the first few in the line and telling them, be quiet. You have to be quiet, you know. And when it started to get more serious, I did start to think, we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it through this. And at that point, I started praying, and I prayed out loud. And I just asked that God would send his army of angels to protect us. That's literally what I said. And I told the kids that I know they didn't know me very well, but I loved them. And I told them, we're going to be okay. But inside, I did not think that we were going to be okay.
Sure.
And one of my last thoughts, too, during that time was, gosh, I'm going to really miss my children growing up. And my mom passed away when I was 15. She had a cancer. And I just thought, this is so sad that my children are going to grow up without a mom, just like I grew up without a mom. And I just hate that for them. But I was also thinking simultaneously, we are all about to be in heaven with God, with Jesus. Like, it was the scariest thing, but I also had this comfort in knowing that if this is the end, I know where we're literally going to be.
Yeah.
Like, after this, in a minute. And it just continued forever. It was in our hallway. We heard the sounds below us at one point. It almost felt like it was happening around us, like 360. And it just seems like the longest time. I had thrown my phone in the midst of the chaos in the beginning, trying to get, you know, everyone over to the wall. And after about, I mean, I know how much time it was now, but in my mind, after about 10 minutes, I was like, I need to go get my phone and call because this is still happening. No one's coming. And my thought was, everyone's gone. Everyone's gone. And the sounds were so loud, it just sounded like, it just sounded like everyone was gone to me.
You mean in the building? Like
I thought everyone had been injured or hurt. Still in the back of my mind, like way back in there, my mind is still trying to come up with some kind of crazy scenario. Like, this must be some crazy FBI, like, government thing that's like, what is happening? I had no idea until, I did know, but I didn't know for certain that there was an active shooter. Someone else told me that until the 911 operator told me that and confirmed that for me. And so I grabbed my phone. I was one of the last 911 callers. And we were talking before this, and I listened back to my phone call a couple days ago. I just wanted to, I don't know, I'm a teacher. I wanted to rate myself. What did I say? How did I do? Did I give the right answers? Could I have been more efficient with how I responded? So I was one of the last 911 callers, and that's when they told me, there's an active shooter. And I just kept saying, please send someone, please send someone, please, please, please send someone. And I think he tells me, I know you're upset. I need you, to stay calm. He was asking me a few questions, like, where do you hear the shots? And is there more than one person? I think they asked me, which I'm like, I don't know. I was also trying to just stay quiet. And at one point they said, be prepared to either fight or flee. And I'm looking around the room and thinking, what am I going to use to fight in here? Mm-hmm. And I did have the Barracuda bar, actually. I forgot that, but I did get the Barracuda bar on the door as well, in the midst of getting the room locked down. So I looked over at a stapler, I looked over at the Barracuda bar, and I'm just thinking, if I was with older students, maybe we'd barricade this door better. But I just felt like the best thing in that moment was to keep everyone quiet and to make it look like our room was completely empty with the blackout curtain and the lights off. And yeah, I think I was on the 911 call for about 5 or 6 minutes, and you can hear, some of the gunshots towards the end. I think that was like the final exchange upstairs. And at one point I say, I think I hear the police. And that must have been when they were coming through. I think they were yelling MMPD, MMPD. And a few of the students were like, okay, we need to get up. And I was like, no, you stay. You don't move. You stay right where you are. And I remember kind of looking out the blackout curtain. And at that point I saw officers. I mean, it was evident to me those were officers with their badges. And I can't remember if I opened the door, I guess I unlocked the door for us to get out, but at that point it was just kind of chaotic.
Yeah.
And yeah, we evacuated the building, and it was really chaotic. And I don't want to go into a lot of detail about this part, but I just knew as we were evacuating, this is really bad. What just happened was really bad.
Where did y'all leave?
We headed down the hill.
No, out of your classroom, did you turn left or right?
Honestly, I don't remember. And
Okay.
I think one of the reasons is because it was so smoky.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, why is there a fire? Of course, I didn't realize it was from all the gunshots.
Yep.
But I do remember my brain being like, why is there a fire? Was there a fire? Is that why there was a fire? I was really confused about that piece, I think. And yeah, that's how we.
So y'all left with at least one officer with you, probably more than one, when you came out of the classroom?
Honestly, getting out, I feel like I have not a lot of memory about that.
It's fair.
And
Common, actually.
I do remember, some officers were stationed at certain points to kind of lead us out. But my main focus was the kids and making sure we all stayed together as we were getting out. Just like if it had been my classroom of students, I was still accountable for all of them. And I remember trying to make sure it was just so chaotic. We were trying to stay together. And once we got out of the building, I don't think they had cleared the whole thing, the whole place, and it was very chaotic. And I know some of us in some grade levels, we kind of got separated, and some went with the officer one way and others went a different direction, but most of us ended up at the fire station. And beyond, I have a lot of vivid memories and images tied to the fire station that haunt me in a lot of ways, even after experience that in the building. And it was really sad. And I just think of, when you think of the words, you know, in the Bible, just weeping and mourning, and it was like that. And it wasn't just, you know, one child who falls in your class, you got a boo-boo and they're upset, you know, that you're taking care of as a teacher. This was like on a scale I had never witnessed before. Just the amount of sadness, shock, confusion, crying,
Fear.
yelling, fear. And, you know, when you look around and you see some of the first responders and their faces are like ghosts, that's when you know this is not good. This is terrible. And the teachers were amazing. They were just doing exactly what they do as teachers. Calm, cool, collected, even keel for the kids. And we still, I remember thinking, I don't feel safe in this fire station. I don't know who, is that an officer? Is that a responder? Like, we need to lock down our fire station, you know? It was just very chaotic. I remember not feeling safe, and we were safe, but it did not feel safe. And that was hard. And that's when people start realizing, you know, I don't see, you know, so-and-so in another grade level. Where's my sibling? And, you know, and you're trying to help them stay calm and, you know, trying to encourage them and say, oh, you know, we're up on a big hill. Everyone ran in different directions. And which ended up being true somewhat. Yeah. That was hard because they wanted their moms, they wanted their dads, and they were yelling for their moms and dads. And I just remember having, you know, these 11-year-old boys like sitting in my lap and just trying to comfort them. And I've just never experienced anything like that on that scale before. And just trying to stay calm. I think during that time, before we were bused over to the reunification center, I was able to text my husband, and I think I said, active shooter, I'm okay right now. Which to him, like to me, I was thinking, he knows I'm safe. I was able to tell him that from this safe spot in the fire station. But for him, he thinks I'm like still in the building.
You said for now.
Yeah,
right now.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Like basically something that didn't have a definite, like I'm in for sure, like I'm safe
I'm
now.
in the clear.
Yeah. And that was so hard for him. I know he parked somewhere on Harding and just ran down to the station.
Let me set a couple of things for the audience that don't know. We all know what you're talking about, but people that aren't familiar with the area, there's a fire hall. Literally, the property adjoins Covenant property. Like the two properties touch each other. So literally, either through the wood. Did y'all go through the woods to the fire hall, or did y'all? I think most did, from what I've listened to. But literally, right there, very quickly, you're out of sight of a bad guy. Or girl in this case, and right on the other side of that wood line is a fire hall. Do you remember at the fire hall? Well, first of all, how many kids did you have that day? Do you remember roughly?
I do, but I don't know if I want to
Okay.
get into the details about the size, but I mean, it was a good size class.
Okay. And then you got to the fire hall, and how many classes do you think were there?
There were a few grade levels at
Okay.
that point. I do remember I didn't see the really young kids, little kids, like pre-K kids. And I remember your mind just starts thinking like, this must have happened, they were safe somewhere else, but it was a decent amount of people inside of there.
Yeah. I'll take you back to the classroom for a minute. You talked about the normalcy bias, and it's so real.
Yeah.
We got great video of it. Well, the chief said
Yes.
you've been through the training. I mean, it's so real. It will happen. That's why we talk about it, is to prepare people for that. But sometimes you still have to work through that process. I mean, it just the way your brain works. And so at some point, though, you transition from a child having some sort of episode to literally thinking you're getting ready to be in heaven, right? So literally somewhere there was a transition where you knew. Do you remember what point that was, or just all of a sudden?
I do. I think it's when I heard the second round that I had heard start up again.
Yeah.
And when I saw the other teacher's face, that helped me know.
Yeah.
Like, because that teacher, the way she looks right now is not typical of how, having worked with teachers and being in school environments, that's not typical of how a teacher would respond to a common noise in their building.
Right.
And the teacher wasn't doing anything crazy or anything. It was just, I just knew looking at her and having been a teacher, and something's not right.
Yeah. Well, to set, without getting too much into detail about the building, to set the stage for people that are listening that aren't familiar, I imagine the first shots you heard were from the top of the stairwell, based on what you told me. And then this, which really would have been second round, would have sounded like the first round to you. It would have sounded like all as in one, but it got louder, as you said, like even though it was from the stairwell moving into the hall. And then there was a pause before things happened at the third grade doors, which for people that don't know where Rachel was in relation to that, it's around a corner, but I'm going to say 20 feet down the hall and turn right, and another 20 feet. So not far at all. And if your door, especially even if your door is not open, but if your door is open and it's a rifle we're talking about, right? We're talking about a high powered rifle. It's very loud. It's when you're that close. Yeah. It's muffled when you're not, but when it's on top of you like that, it's the concussive blast is bouncing off those walls. It's so she was extremely close, and I imagine that's probably when your brain transitioned. But the fact that you had been through training before, it doesn't sound like there was much thought process. You just did. You knew what to do, and you did.
And it's because I had done that.
Yep.
The steps over and over and over again.
Yep.
And some days I wrestle with the two questions. I'm like, why was I there? But then, or I wrestle with the question, why was I there? And then the answer, I know why I was there. I knew God put me there. I knew what to do. It wasn't anything like of my own merit. It's just I had that training to do that. And it sounds crazy to say, I'm glad I was there, but I'm glad that I was there.
Sure.
And I was the sub that had training as a teacher, because personally, I know the subs I've had as a teacher. And I would not want, thinking about past classes, I would not have wanted those subs to have been in there during something like that.
Sure. It's fair. You also mentioned earlier that you felt like, based on what was going on, that the safest thing for you guys was to be completely quiet, make the room seem unoccupied, all those things. Turned out to be very true. I don't know if you know this or not, but at a minimum that we know for a fact, the gunman passed your classroom door twice.
Yeah, I believe that based on what we were hearing.
Maybe more, but for a fact, as in video evidence, and that hallway is not wide. I mean, it's just a hallway. So she, like,
yeah,
I think the most she could have been away from your door, even if she sucked up against the far wall, would be maybe 6 feet. I mean, you're familiar with that building. But she walked right by your door twice. And I imagine the shot you heard into the classrooms right near you, and then there was a pause. That was her coming by you, and then you probably heard some more. I know you did, based on where you were, which is when she encountered Catherine in the hallway, which I think you know where that happened.
I think so.
If you turn right out of your room, take the next right, like you're going to the office, right there. So basically, I think bathrooms separated your wall and that hallway where the gunman encountered Catherine. And all that, you know, you talked about how you felt like it was a long time.
Yeah.
All that, as far as the not the shooting you heard downstairs, but what you heard upstairs when there were actual victims that she was shooting, less than 3 minutes, all of them. So that's how fast, you know, I mean, I know even that first 3 minutes, I'm sure, seemed like an eternity, but it was less than 3, like that, all that transpired. And then actually there's some unknowns to this day about where the shooter went for a little while. Downstairs, do you know what was going on? Do you want me to tell you, like, what you heard, or have you figured out?
I'm pretty sure I watched everything after, you know.
Then she was shooting the TVs below you.
Yeah.
That's in that long hallway, because it's basically right under your room is what it would be.
Yeah, I wanted to know, for me personally, I wanted to know what happened based on what I heard.
Yeah.
That helped me understand better. I know maybe not everybody wanted to know all the details, but I just like needed to know.
So I want to hit on that for a minute. Everybody processes trauma differently. But one common factor we see is having answers and having knowledge and understanding. And, you know, just to kind of, I guess I should have set this up in the beginning, but you and I didn't know each other before this. You obviously, after, knew who I was, and you knew my relationship with that community and with that school and with certain people at that school. And I guess most importantly for you, you knew I had answers, and you reached out and said, I just want to talk through this. And I don't remember how long we were on the phone, but it was a long time. And I remember it was a long time because I don't stay on the phone that long very often.
I was like, I just need to talk to somebody who understands this stuff and can help me process what I just happened, like what I was hearing, where it was coming from. I need to know.
There's been a lot on school side, on the church side even. There's been a lot of people that have had to ask different things. And just because of the unique position I was blessed, I do mean blessed to be in. It's been tough, I'm not going to lie, but it's a blessing to be able to have answers, like, for people, because I know that's helpful. But, you know, I've been asked questions by every part of this thing. From the cops had to ask me stuff. I mean, I literally get a phone call like, hey, man, I need to interview you. Like, I'll be there tomorrow. You know, like, we're coming back in town. Like, I don't want to do this, but I know it's important. Yeah. To church staff, to you guys, to facilities personnel, to parents in the community who didn't understand certain things they heard about, to it's just a unique.
You're in a unique position.
Yeah.
And I feel like you seemed like you seemed like a very neutral, safe, helpful person who had a relationship to people. I mean, I didn't know you yet, but that was, yeah, I think after something like that, everyone's looking for guidance, for leadership, for something. And, you know, there's just not, I feel like after a mass shooting, it's so chaotic. So many things are having to be tackled and taken on. And I know from talking to other survivors from mass shootings now, you know, the past 2 years, and building relationships with them and hearing their stories, they too were searching for something after, you know, just not necessarily even for answers, but just someone to like lead or talk or encourage, you know. And a lot of that I find in my faith, obviously, but just from like a very logical, realistic standpoint, I felt like I really needed clarity on what happened. And just talking about what happened again with you, like with your background, helped me process what had just happened to me. Like I was having a really hard time processing it. And yeah, I think that was an important piece, helping me kind of start the trajectory of processing it.
Yeah.
And I knew I wanted to process it. I did not want to shove it down. I did not want to hide it. I didn't want to put it under a rug. I didn't go into this in the beginning, but from my childhood, I had gone through a lot of what people would call traumatic experiences. And I just knew, you know, from talking to counselors in my early 20s to go through all that, like, I'm going to have to go through this. This is not something that's just, I can hide away. And for me personally, talking about it with people was so helpful in the beginning. And people who I trusted and who I felt like were safe places for me. And it's interesting as time has gone on, you know, one of the things, and we can get into this more in a little bit, but right after it happened, I remember, you know, a few days later, I'd be out in public grocery shopping or near Puffy Muffin and Maryland Farms, and everyone's talking about this. The whole community is talking about this.
Yep.
And it was very strange walking through and living, and like everyone around me is talking about this, but like no one knew
who you were.
I was there.
Yeah.
Not that I wanted them to know. It was very strange, and it was really isolating in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I knew like early on, I'm going to have to talk about this with people who I trust and who can help me process this and all of the emotions and all of the weird things and what I saw. And yeah, like someone said before, you know, you have to deal with this to be there for the people in your life. You know, I have at that point 2 children, and I was like, I have to be their mom. Like, I need to be present. And I know that I was not present. I don't think they probably knew any difference, but I really struggled in the months after.
Yeah, well, it's fair. I mean,
Yeah.
How old were they at the time?
I think our oldest was 3,
Oh,
3.5 maybe, and our youngest was just over a year old.
yeah.
And yeah, that was difficult, going home that night and putting on mom hat. And I mean, I was a little bit of pretend. I had to pretend that everything was okay. Like, I didn't just go through that and do bath time and story time, but I was just so thankful to be alive. But at the same time, I was like, what is happening? But I just knew, you know, I have to be there for them, and I get to be here for them.
Yeah. I want to back up a little bit, just talk about before you got home, kind of the rest of the day. You guys are at the fire hall. It took a while to get you guys out of the fire hall. I know that. There was a lot of confusion, as it turns out. I don't know if I've shared this with you or not, Tom, but there was a lot of confusion, as it turns out, about the buses and where they were supposed to go. There's a lot of miscommunication happening. And I'm not busting on anybody. That's these events. That's just, we talked about this on a prior episode. It's just the way it goes. And, you're calling for buses for this group. Buses show up and cops are grabbing them. Well, wrong buses. Those were for those people. But they don't know. It's just, so I know y'all were down there a minute, like longer than.
Yeah, it was a long time.
Than anticipated. That wasn't the plan, by the way. The cops were working on, I know from listening to the stuff, like, that just some things went awry, and y'all ended up being there a while. So I know eventually some counselors made it there. Yeah. Some of the behavioral health folks made it to you guys before y'all were able to be moved. But at what point? Well, you're not on the emergency text thread. So how are you getting information during that time about what's going on around you? Are other teachers talking to you? Are you just absorbing?
No, I feel like the teachers, we were all so focused on keeping the kids calm.
Yeah.
And, after the fact, I think Sissy Goff talked to us one evening, and she was talking about how when kids experience something super traumatic, they're going to come in and out of it. So the kids would be asking us these really intense questions like, why did that just happen? Is it because we're Christians? I mean, I remember a student asking, is it because we're Christians? Like, is that what? Did something happen because of that? But then, there were snacks and donuts, and then they're eating the snacks and donuts. And then I think at that point there's therapy dog, but then they'd come back and then they'd have another really hard question. And it was like the teachers were riding this wave.
Yeah.
For 4 or 5, however many hours we were there. Like I said, the teachers were
This is
amazing.
Before y'all went to the...
This was at the reunification center.
Okay.
Sorry.
Got it.
I mean, it was that was starting to happen at the fire station too, but I think all the teachers were trying to stay very present for the kids. I started hearing bits and pieces a little bit because I had my phone, and my husband was able to text me a couple things. He was upstairs at this point. He did come down briefly, I think to use the restroom or something down there. I was able to see him briefly, and he had filled me in on a couple things, and he said, they're saying it was some girl. And in my mind, I don't know. I was envisioning like a military giant person of some sort. I didn't really know. I don't know why that's what I guess because of those noises. And when you think about guns, I don't know. I guess I think about the military. And I was just so confused. I remember being like, what? I'm so confused, like what you're saying. What? And I think everyone else in the world knew more than we did at that point. And having talked with family members, we kind of put the timelines together, and it was all over the news. So they knew what was happening before I did at that point, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't because y'all didn't crave the information. It's because of what y'all were focused on, and I think that's important to note. I mean, you've hit on it a couple of times and bragged on the other teachers, but I mean, that includes you too, P.S., that y'all were focused so in the moment on being there for the kids and getting them back to their parents and all that you guys weren't on your phones craving, trying to figure out what happened. Like your focus was the kids.
Yeah.
Like that's why you get into teaching. Tom was a teacher. Like your heart is with those kids, getting them back to their...
Right.
But at some point, that's over, and you go home. Are you?
Yeah.
What is that? Do you remember roughly what time it was? Like, how did you?
It was at least.
I mean, because you don't have your car.
Yeah, my
right. Car's in a crime scene.
My car was damaged too in the shooting.
Okay.
So I didn't have my car back. Actually, I had to get it.
I know
back
where you
quickly,
parked then.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know that though at first because none of us could get our things. but I found out a couple days later it had been damaged. I think we left around dinner time, maybe. We're exiting the church and the reunification center site. That's what I mean by church. And I remember seeing all of these media people with cameras. And for me, it was really irritating. I was very irritated. Like, I wanted those people to go away.
Yeah, sure.
And I wanted to walk to my car, or my husband's car, and leave and sit in the car with him. And at that point, I hadn't cried yet. Like, I didn't cry until like the next day. Well, actually, I take that back. I did cry at the church when we did learn about the victims. And I think after that, I was just numb, but I wanted to be left alone. And I was very irritated by all the media people. I already had someone like contacting me on Facebook messages because my sister had maybe posted something, which was totally fine, but they somehow found my information through her. I mean, I don't even understand like how that happened. And obviously I did not want to talk to them and wasn't going to, and didn't feel like it was appropriate at that time. We went home, had dinner. I think that our children had Chick-fil-A.
Who had your kids? Like when you left home that morning, your husband and kids were still at home.
Yeah. He was with one of the younger ones. The younger one. I say younger ones because now I have 3. But and the oldest was at her preschool. And we picked her up from the preschool.
Like on your way home?
Yeah. And got Chick-fil-A.
So the youngest was with your husband the whole time that like he shows up and all this is happening?
He was in the morning, and then I can't remember. Honestly, I cannot remember like what happened with her. Got her somewhere because then he was by himself.
Okay. Got her family or loved one or someone had her.
Yeah. My sister was on her way down. All
right.
of that was like so blurry. But I do remember they had Chick-fil-A and we did bath time and put him to bed. My sister and her husband were at the house by that point. And our oldest, she was only 3.5, but she was like, why is Aunt so-and-so here?
Yeah.
Why is our aunt here? She's not normally here on a Monday night.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we didn't say anything to her at the time, but I feel like she knew still intuitively, like something's off, And then we went upstairs to our kind of den area, and that was just when everything was coming out. People were messaging. That's when I started to become really obsessive, and I just felt like I craved the information. I was like, I need to know. But at the same time, I was like so annoyed by how some of the stuff was being put out already.
Yeah.
And the way it was being worded. And it felt so disrespectful to me. Not every news site, but for me personally, that was really hard. I was angry at the media. I was angry at the news people. I just felt like we were literally all in shock, but they're just doing all their stuff and commenting on all their things. And
felt like just another news story.
Yeah. And it was just like people just lost their lives.
Yeah.
And I just wanted us to be I wanted there to be time and space for everyone to grieve, and we're still grieving, but to mourn. And it was just strange because at the same time, like I wanted to know what happened to me. And so it was like that weird back and forth. And I think the next day, 2 days later, just everything for me personally, what I was seeing became so political, and it made me more mad.
Sure.
And, people have differing views on that, but I just wanted everybody else to just stop and mourn and grieve. And, at that point, I just felt like the news story was changing so much, and every day this was happening. And I think it angered me because I felt like it was being taken away, like the experience was being taken away and was being turned into something different than what actually happened to us personally and to the families who lost loved ones. And this is my perspective, and I can't, speak for what the families who lost loved ones are thinking or feeling, but I just remember feeling angry. I was really angry, and that kind of stayed with me for a while, like towards the news, media, and just on a spiritual level, to be honest with you guys, that night and the next day, it was so evident to me that what happened was evil. It was pure evil, and I could feel it like in my soul. Like I knew Satan literally was right there.
Yep.
And like I still get a physical reaction from that realization of like, that's what to me, it was very clear, like that's what that was. That is evil in the flesh. And I told a friend, I said, and Brent, my husband, I just said, I think there was stuff going on there on a spiritual level that we will never understand on this side, on earth. Like we're not going to understand it. It's like the invisible veil. To me, that's just like, I don't know how else to explain it. And I don't know if that might sound crazy to some people, but it was very clear to me. Like I just knew that as like a truth. And I was like, I'm going to call this out for what that was, what it is. And yeah, that's like really stayed with me. And I think about that every day.
Same. I did a walk through the crime scene. Shooting was on a Monday, so Wednesday. So nothing had changed yet as far as that stuff goes. And I was trying to describe it to somebody, and you almost have no words, just because you're just trying to process it all. And all I could come up with was, all I know to tell you is Satan walked the halls of that school. Like,
yeah.
And that was the day of the walkthrough, so that would have been Wednesday after. So like it was clear, same to me. So it doesn't sound weird. And I think most believers, not
Yeah.
most, I think maybe, and I'm not all believers, but that there's no other way to quantify what I saw and what you're trying to process. Yeah. And I still struggle with all that because like things you should never see together. Right, like things you should never see in the same space.
Yeah,
like
it's disturbing.
The DNA evidence, the physical evidence from the projectiles, the sippy cups, the backpacks with their names on them, their favorite lovey. Like it shouldn't exist in the same physical space ever. And as it's and that's there's no other way to quantify it except what you said, and I echoed it. 100%.
Yeah. It's just disturbing, but then it's juxtaposed with later that summer, my husband and I were able to get away for a couple days, and it's the first time like we'd really been able to do that after everything happened. And we were at the beach, and I was looking at the beach and looking at the sun setting, and hearing the waves and just thinking like God's creation is so beautiful. And for me, I don't know, it was like a way to come back a little bit to reality. It had been 3 months or 4 months at that point. Like, God is still good. God's still here. God's beauty still exists, even though it was marred or tried to be marred. I mean, it's never going to go away. God's truth and beauty is always there. And I think about that every day, just like the juxtaposition of that and like good and evil. And I think having, and I didn't think I'd ever be faced with that, like, oh, I'm about to die, until I know, in my mind, I think, oh, I'll be, elderly when that happens. And truly being faced with that, like faced with death and thinking like my life is about to end, I think it puts everything into perspective. And I think about those things every day now, just death and life and the hope of eternity. And yeah, all of it interwoven together. It's just a lot.
And it's there's a dichotomy there too, right? Because part of that's beautiful, right? That it made you do that, you know, and that it makes things so much more, you're so much more thankful and appreciative, and you notice the little stuff, and like, but at the same time, that the traumatic experience that took you to where you are is still terrible and traumatic.
Yeah.
But the result, if you will, or on the backside of that, in many ways is beautiful. I mean, talking about, we won't name the girl you were subbing for, but the relationship that's developed there, you didn't even know her prior to this.
Yeah.
And there's so many stories like that are so many amazing things that came out of this, even with all the ugliness and all the other stuff that's gone on too. And nobody's wrong. That was the thing that I learned from hearing from other mass shooting people. Everybody's got a different opinion about stuff, and you're going to have relationships that end and friendships that end over stuff about that, and none of them are wrong. Like, everybody processes differently. So, kind of where we've gone with everybody, or tried to, that we've talked to on this situation, it's like, obviously I want to know about your day and I want to know about the event, but just as important, and we talk about this in our training, is, because and that's another interesting thing the audience doesn't know, but after you and I got connected, then you came and sat through, our training, which I think was great. I mean, you'd been through training before, but just to see the programming and kind of know what your coworkers were processing that day.
Right.
And
I wanted to, see like what they had been through
and understand it
with the training. Yeah.
But just as important is the mental trauma side and the journey there. And obviously the way you processed it, I mean, we've talked about, is having information and having details and being able to unpack it and talk to people, which again, I mean, I'm so glad you reached out, because there's so many people in this community that I know of but don't know for various reasons, i.e. you, and so getting to meet them and talk to them and be trusted by, I mean, it's obviously I was trusted enough by you to even reach out and go through everything, which thanks. I mean, that means a lot. And it's helpful for me too, to be honest with you. I mean, it's tough, but it's therapeutic. It's kind of, this weird conundrum there. So what do you think? Like, there's tons of people that experience this, right? This whole community, to your point, walking by Puffy Muffin, I know exactly where you are. I'm over there all the time. Yeah. And hearing people talk about this thing that just rocked this community, and the peace and the comfort and it's gone. The innocence gone. Like everything's. Yeah. So everybody experienced this in some shape, form, or fashion. The whole community, different levels of trauma. What would you say to somebody else listening, because that's the whole point of this series, is to be helpful and healing and storytelling and communicating, and man, like, hey, I'm not the only one that feels that way, you know, kind of thing. What would you say to somebody listening right now that did experience this and that's been most helpful for you on the post-incident side of things, like from a mental trauma perspective? What has been most helpful, or what advice would you give there?
A few things. The first thing for me, it helped to let my body sleep when I needed to rest. I was not sleeping at first at all. But then when I kind of got to a point where it was like my body just needs to shut down, just let your body do what it needs to do to heal. Like, the brain has literally gone through so much. The amygdala is taking over and your frontal cortex is pretty much shut off still. And understand, I mean, for some people, and maybe this teacher and me, but understanding like what was going on with my brain in response to the trauma helped me heal in some ways, because I knew like, okay, this is normal. Like, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Where did the time go today? What day of the week is it? I mean, I was so confused. I just felt like simple tasks were so hard. Knowing that that is normal after something like that was helpful. And it took me a while. The nightmares are okay. Your brain is still stuck in the fight or flight. And while you're going through all of that and riding this crazy wave of physical and emotional recovery, I say physical because I do feel like the brain has to physically heal from what happened.
It does, yeah, for sure.
And for me, talking with some of the first counselors I got connected with was really helpful. I joined a group on Facebook called the Rebels Project, and it's a survivor group started by Columbine survivors. And looking back at past discussion posts was really helpful from other survivors. I mean, I didn't really know anyone else in Nashville or Tennessee who had gone through a mass shooting. You know, I have a lot of educator friends, a lot of my family members are teachers, but they hadn't gone through that. That was really helpful to know that this is normal. And, you know, when you hear people replacing the roofs in the spring because there was the hailstorm, like, it's okay to feel scared, and your body is going to kind of freak out a little bit on the inside. That's normal. And over time, the sounds will get better. And your response to the sounds will get better. And for me, it was very much like an internal response. I don't think other people would have necessarily like noticed, but I still remember them working on those roofs and hammering, and I could feel like my brain getting agitated and like feeling irritable from the sounds. Yeah. And I do think it brought on like, yeah, for me, it was like anger, which is weird. Like, I don't know. It was like sometimes more anger than sadness. And, you know, that's 2 years removed now. It's gotten a lot better. But if there is a sudden noise still, I'm immediately like, what's the source of the sound? Am I okay? Are my children okay? Like, and I'm highly aware of my surroundings, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I don't know. So it's like,
you know, I might be a little one-sided there. Me and Tom both would never disagree with that.
Yeah, I think I still don't have the answer for how to navigate what's being put out in the media. Like, I feel like as a survivor, like, you want to know the facts and the knowledge, but how do you protect yourself from a lot of the noise and unhelpful things? I don't have an answer for that, because I became very obsessive even with other mass shootings that would happen after ours. Like, I would follow every update on things, like the one in Maine, the one in Georgia, the recent one at the Christian school in Wisconsin. And I actually connected with someone from there, which has been, I think it's interesting, like now being able to help someone who has just gone through something like that. And I don't even know what I'm saying to them is helpful, but I think just hearing someone on the other side of it and knowing they're talking to you and having this conversation can be helpful. And yeah, it's like I say a few things, but I don't know if there's really any one answer to it all.
There's not.
That's what I was saying. And you looking, wanting those facts and even looking at the others, your brain is still trying to bring reason.
Yeah.
Why? And you hit it on the head earlier. It's pure evil.
Yeah.
It was Satan. And for normal people, that's so hard to comprehend that. What was the reasoning for this?
Yeah.
And those answers, we keep looking for it, and it's evil.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that there's an earth and there's a heaven.
Yeah.
And there's a hell.
And I am really into research and was trying to read all these research articles on profiles and blah, blah, blah. And I came across this reporter, I think he was from England, and his task, like he tasked himself with going to prisons of places where mass shooters were still being held and interviewing them about their experience. Like, what drove you to do what you did? Would it have been different if, XYZ happened? I'll have to find the article and send it to you. But
I'd love that.
There was this one section, and I think he interviewed 10, and over half of them mentioned during their experience of when they did what they did, it felt like their body had been taken over. And when I read that, I was like, an ordinary person, like someone who's not a believer would just say, oh, like it was adrenaline, it was this or that. But when I read that line, to me, I was like, yeah, it was evil. It was Satan they gave themselves over to Satan. He took them over. Like I got like goosebumps all over again, because having kind of dug into some of that and reading about what they had said about their experience, having done what they did, it just added to what I already knew. And it's scary to think of that, but
it's real. I mean, obviously it's real. And, to Tom's point, we as humans, we crave closure and we crave understanding, and we want to make sense of the senseless. And it, at some point, it's not in our human nature to accept that there's just some things we're not going to understand until we're on the other side. And that's just the way it is. And it's hard. It's very hard. But to your point earlier, it's where faith comes in, and it's played such a huge role. I don't, and again, I don't, to each his own as far as what their beliefs are, but I can't fathom how people who are not get through some of this stuff, or work through it, or don't lean on their faith. But again, I mean, that works for you and for me. And I think most believers, even though it's tough, I mean, it's not an easy road to walk. I mean, everybody we've interviewed about this is still walking this. Like it's still a thing. It's still there.
Yeah. It's still
like, it's never going to completely go away. It's how do you process it? How do you deal with it? How do you learn from it? How do you grow from it? And most of us, and you're finding yourself in these shoes too, are trying to find a way to help others.
Yes. And something a pastor said, and a few months after, it wasn't even on the shooting, but a pastor, we visited a different church for a while, and the pastor was talking about struggles, trauma, devastating things, like the most gut-wrenching things that happen to you. And, as believers, the question goes from, why did this happen to me, to how can God use this in my life? And that's like where I'm at. And like, how can I help other people? And it doesn't have to be, ways like this on a podcast or writing an article or a book necessarily. Like, it may just be being there for someone else who's struggling, and like they know you went through something really traumatic and they see that you're still hopeful. And yeah, I think being there for people is really important.
That's why you're sitting here. I mean, you reached out to me, like, which I love, by the way, when you heard about us doing this. Because it's a delicate, for us, there are going to be people that are part of the March 27th community that would prefer we not do stuff like this. And I understand that. And I respect that, and I respect their opinion. And I respect everybody in that community. But at the end of the day, our intentions are pure. We're trying to help. And I think this will help a lot of people, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And a lot of you guys that experience this are where you are, that you're looking for ways to help. And there are obviously, without getting into too much detail because of privacy issues, but there are people in these events that have, everything from the worst of the worst as far as who you could be in relation to this event versus teachers versus even law enforcement or first responders that had to do something horrific. A lot of those people, even though there was so much trauma for all of you guys, have I've seen turn a really beautiful corner in that they're looking for ways to help. I got multiple calls from that. Again, I don't want to get into anything too specific, but when Antioch happened, hey, if there's something I can do to help that family, if they want to talk to somebody, if they, I don't know, all the things, the first responders.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's tragic how we got there.
Right.
But it's really awesome to see that the goodness coming out of this, like that it is turning to help other people who've been through other events. So, it's, again, is this double-edged sword in this whole thing, right?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of the past 2 years, I've just been exhausted by discernment. I feel like I'm constantly trying to discern, like, what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. Who should I talk to? Not that I want to talk to people. I haven't talked to anyone in the media the past 2 years. I've had a few people reach out to me and ask for interviews. One of those was a Christian organization research group, but I didn't know them personally. And yeah, I think I've wanted to be respectful of everyone who went through this. And I think for me, just this conversation has been really helpful for me to just talk openly with you guys about what happened. It's weird. It's I've wanted to talk about it in ways, but yeah, you're always second, I guess for me, I'm always second guessing myself, and I don't know where some of that comes from, but I mean, I don't need to be ashamed of my story, and I do want to help other people. And even if it's just being prepared in an emergency, just not even on a spiritual level, but just practical things to do. I've told my family members who are teachers, if you hear a loud banging noise, don't go out in the hallway and try to see what's going, just lock your classroom down. Simple things like that. I think they're really important, and you think it will never happen to you. And then when it happens, it happens.
Yeah, we hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure speak for both of us, but if Tom wants to say his own thing, it means a lot that you put your trust in us to come do this, because it is, there's only, you can talk to anybody about anything, obviously, right? But when it comes to this event, there's such a small contingent of people that can talk to each other that really understand not only everything that happened, but how different people were affected. Anyway, all the things it's a smaller group to unpack, to find that you can unpack this with, right? I could talk to Tom about this all day.
Yeah.
He's obviously a very close friend of mine. It's different than talking to you about it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's just different. And so because of that, there's a smaller contingent of people. But the fact that you did means a lot to us. It will mean a lot from people that listen to this and other people in this, what we call the March 27th community, that are still struggling, healing. First responders, there's still a lot of them struggling. I mean, rightfully so, right? Again, nobody should ever, again, have to process all the things we talked about that had processed, in that moment. It should never happen, but we are grateful, and I know there are people that maybe they're struggling with something else and are going to get something positive out of what you said. Matter of fact, I can guarantee you there will be.
Yeah, I hope so. Even if it's just like looking at your life and figuring out what you believe. I mean, we always think like we're invincible as humans, but we're all going to die. I mean, it's inevitable. Like, we're all going to die. And I think being able to know, like, for me, when that was about to happen, like, it's encouraging for me that I knew what I thought I believed. Like, I did believe what I've always thought I believed, but like, it was confirmation of that in that moment. And yeah, I think about, a lot of people that I know and love, and think about what they believe. And yeah, I hope it can be encouraging to them and hopefully, provide some kind of hope.
I think it will.
Absolutely.
And a really awesome thing you just said, as terrifying as that moment was, right? How remarkable is like your peace, and like,
yeah,
that only comes from one place. I mean, there's no other explanation for that. So I just want to wrap here and close by again saying, not only thank you for doing this because it's going to be helpful, but thank you for trusting us with it, because you just mentioned that you've been asked to do this before and you didn't. And I love that we're friends, and I love that I know you. I hate the reason I know you. I think we both do. I mean, being honest. But it's been great to get to know you, and I'm so glad you reached out about this, and this is 100% going to be helpful for some people. Mm-hmm. So thank you for doing that. On that note, that's going to wrap it for this edition of Tips, Tactics, and Tools. If you want to reach out, you have questions, show ideas, want to learn more about this event, or want to hear from other people, whatever that is, I don't care what the question is. You can just reach us at info@defensesystems.com, whether that's me or Tom. I'm happy to get the questions over to you, and we appreciate you guys listening, and hope you'll tune in for the next episode.
I'm out.